welcome people to the second installment of building an Elm platform. Basically, well, an Elm RPG platform, sorry. Uh, Basically, where did we go from last time? We were building the beginning of a map. I believe that's what I'm showing here. Yep. And we can move around with some arrow keys. And we want to be able to have this thing take arbitrary maps, user-generated maps. And we want to be able to build those with an HTML form so that people who are brand new to making games don't have to do any code. So if you haven't seen the first episodes, like the first streaming session last week, basically the goal is have a user define an entire game by just data. So they're filling out forms like you would signing up for a website, uploading sprites, and basically crafting what the rules are to their game. So it's going to take quite a while to make this thing, but I'm excited to just build it piece by piece and be with people on here while I whiteboard and come up with ideas. I'd like feedback and suggestions. So there's definitely going to be ways that more minds than one will benefit us. So today I have some goals, but first I'm going to talk about what's in the info. So if you are new to Elm, by the way, Elm is a programming language that's best suited for the browser currently, and it does a great job abstracting the web platform. So basically what Elm does for you is make it really nice to interface with all the web APIs in a safe way so that you can not be as worried about is my app going to crash? Is it going to do something absolutely crazy? So that's why I'm coding in Elm, and that's why I actually feel somewhat confident in my abilities because I have these guarantees. So, and then for those of you who are also new to Elm, I'll try to explain most of what's going on, but I would really recommend checking out the links that I posted as well, basically to the Elm website to learn more about it, and also to the guide. Evan, the creator of Elm, does a pretty good job explaining some of the concepts, and I'd also plug Elm in Action. If you're used to learning things by example and building something in that tool, I definitely recommend checking out that book and starting to build. I believe it's like an Instagram-like app in that book that Rich is working on. And then the other links about diversity in technology. I think it's really important that the Elm community welcomes and embraces people who are underrepresented in the tech community. Typically it's white males like me, and I'm not the best to speak on that subject, but I definitely want people to go and try to hit up these resources and find out what they can do to make this atmosphere better. Ways to, if you know about this already and you're coming to the stream as I just want to better myself, like many people do, just to learn, and you want to go ahead and teach that on, that's great. And mentoring, there's a link in there for Code 2040. That's a San Francisco-based mentoring program for underrepresented minorities in tech, specifically Latino and African American, and that's just one organization. I'm sure there's many more, and if there isn't one in your area, I definitely recommend seeing what you can do to get out there and get in touch with the community. And then the other video is to debugging diversity, which was a great talk at Strange Loop. I've only been able to see about half of it, but it's been pretty great. I was watching it before making this video, but ran out of time. And basically it's calling out to say that having diversity is not only a humanitarian good thing to do and what we need to be acceptable, but also to help us write better code and to help us engineer better solutions for like the true audience of people, which is everyone and not just the people who are most like us. So having that diversity in thought is extremely important. We have a lot of discussions about that at my work, and I really want to bring that into the community as well. So feel free to follow those links and find out more. And then the project link is down there in case you want to play with the repository, fork it, whatever you want to do, fix any of my bad code. And yeah, so let's move on to the actual thing. I have some goals today that I threw up in editor. Also, a lot of this, the layout and everything, I'd say a big thank you to Aaron Vonderhaar. He's been streaming quite a bit on Elm the last couple weeks, and he's got a really nice suite of videos, well produced, good setup. I mean, he's influenced this setup here for me on OBS Studio, and yeah, I'm just trying to do things at least as well as him. So my goals today are to, where we left off is we have a game, and I'd like to be able to route us to another page of the app where we can go and build a new game / a new map. And then I'd like to do that in a single page app way. I don't want to start a new, hit a new endpoint for the server and have that come back with some data. I just want to do it in the Elm app. And I'd also like to whiteboard the maps themselves, like what they can do, what kind of tiles you can put in. What is the business logic about? Can this circle move into certain tiles, and what tiles can it not? I'd also really like to make this back. You can see this red circle in grass is really ugly. So I think adding starting to look for some sprites and make this thing actually look a little more legit would be really cool. So I had some people last time post some links to sprites. I'd like to throw those into the project. And then I think what we can move on to from there is to build a tile editor. So we have something on maybe the right side of the page where we can upload an image or a sprite, and then define a name for that thing, and whatever else we decide during the whiteboard session that should go into a tile. And then once we have that tile, we can look at building this matrix of tiles, this game board, and how are we going to map that tile to those inputs. I think a first good step would be to click on a invisible tile, just like a border, and then select from a drop down which tile you want to put there. But that's going to be a little annoying to just go tile to tile. So that's a good first step, and then I'd like to be able to do drag and drop. So will we get to today? I don't know. It just depends on how much success I have at these things, especially because I have little to zero experience in navigation, and I started it last time without uploading some of that from the live stream to YouTube because it was rather sloppy, and I didn't have my browser set up so you could see what I was reading. So I'd like to just kind of take a fresh stab at that today. Yeah, so I say we get started with that, reading about what navigation looks like in Elm and what the APIs are like. Generally, what I know is that there's two packages that I'll probably be using. One is from the ElmLive site. Let's go ahead and zoom in on this. All right, just realized that my audio input was off in this scene, so my bad. I'll start back to where I was before I switch to this. Basically, we're learning about navigation, and we're going to look at Evan's library URL parser and see an example of using both the parser to grab the string from the URL and make it into a meaningful message type for transitioning. No problem. And then we're going to use this example and work off of it to figure out how to put this into this program. So let's go back to page. All right. So this is even URL, check out URL parser for fancier URL parsing. Okay, interesting. So he's saying that there's a navigation make parser, and hash parsers meaning that he wants to use a hash string instead of a hard URL because we have to have a server that responds to that to know, oh, hey, you went to a different URL, just pretend that that's okay and let the main index page handle that. I've done it before, but there's no reason to do that at this point. I don't want to do any server work right now. This should just be just Elm, and I'll get to that another time. So to hash, we can see case page of home, blog. We've got some query strings and stuff. We don't need really any of this yet. And then we can see there's a hash parser. So there's URL parser here. Let's see where that's imported from. Okay, import URL parser. And he's parsing identity page parser. So let's see where identity is defined. I believe that that's imported. Oh no, that's a basic. That's a basic operation in basics dot Elm. You can check that out and let me confirm that that's correct. If I go to basics, what was it called again? Identity. Yeah. So this is giving a value, returning exactly the same value, just the identity function. Okay. Because I'm not sure exactly what URL parser is taking, and I should probably see exactly what that is. Go to here, see this API, URL parser, and what was this thing called? URL parser.parse. Would be useful. There we go. So, some formatter, okay. Sorry about that. The neighborhood's a bit noisy. So we've got a formatter, and the parser also takes this formatter. What exactly does it mean by formatter here? Parse. Notice that the comma function for building tuples as the first argument to parse requires a formatter of type int to string a, so we need to provide that to actually run things. Oh, I see, okay. So this is the blog is the parser, and it takes, okay, it grabs out an integer and a string, and that's what S is defined as. Given a string, produce a parser, matches exactly the given string. Okay. And we've got string and a result. So if we go back to this example, we're passing it, the formatter is just returning exactly the same shape of data, and then we're passing it a page parser. We're just saying it's going to be one of home, blog, or search, and then match exactly the string home, match blog with an integer, match search with a string. Okay, cool, I like that. And then this is just removing from the location one character on the left, the hash. Awesome, so that's how it's matching right here and not hashtag home. Cool. And then it looks like everything else. Yeah, the page just stores the page. It looks like URL is actually not stored in the model here. But what's query? Okay, so it looks like query has nothing to do with. Okay, it's for whatever his app is doing, which is fetching some places with a zip code. Okay, cool. And then we have a view page for each one. Nice. All right, let's try to bring this into our app. Go over to, so game is our entire board game, which is this thing. And just to give you a recap on last time, it's got a map, which is a matrix of tiles. It's got a player, and it has a current position. If you've seen Richard Feldman's talk from ElmConf, he talks about making certain states impossible. And one state I'd like to make impossible at some point that I tried early but thought about it again is to make the current position not be able to go off the board. So as you can see here, if I go too far, I didn't write any bounding logic right now, so the indexes get past the size of the board. So I'd like to see if we can make that state impossible. But that's for another stream. So position's just X and Y, where it is. Player right now, I just said that he has a hat color. But really, this is going to be changed to like the sprite. And it'll still be a string, but it will have some cool sprite, so it won't just be a red circle. The tile itself right now has just a name and a background image. We're going to whiteboard on this in a little bit. And then all we do is really repeat a 5x5 matrix and start with a grass tile, and then here's some URL for something off of Wikipedia. Then when I knit the model, I just have myself thrown into a game board starting at 0, 0, and then I handle all the key codes for down, up, left, right. So yeah, that's basically how this works. And this is just a helper function that actually Aaron wrote in his stream in his first Lights Out game called Matrix to Divs, which takes this matrix and the HTML that I represented right here. I'm turning a model into HTML, and then takes that matrix and turns it into HTML. So it's no longer a matrix of HTML, it's just one HTML, like divs nested. And so that's pretty much the whole game at this point. So now we want to work on the map builder, which is right now just a simple hello world with some build tile, which is just a string right now. So in the main, we're going to remove a lot of this navigation code that I had prior, or at least refactor it. And because this compiles, but it does not parse the string properly and route to the page. So we're going to work on that now. Let's see here. So we have navigation make parser. Let's take a look at his hash parser. I think that this looks like a pretty good function for our needs. We have it's a very simple thing that we're doing here. We only go into 2 pages, and they have not even any arguments at this point. So navigation.location. Actually, we can just have this pasted in here. So we're going to get some result string page. So URL parser. I believe that's this library. Import this stuff up here. Delete some lines here. So this is the y and x plane. I think that's pretty obvious by now. But that's how we're building the board. So going back to this main where it enters the app, I like to go usually top down. Okay, so we have this hash parser, and we already have a URL update, but we need to change some of those things. So to hash. I think we have something similar to this. Let's switch real quick to a view where I'm coding. All right. So yeah, okay. So we have some URL for, location for, URL update. Let's simplify these to more like what we saw in this example. So if we have a to hash for each one, that's kind of what we're doing here, but we're going to grab, these are going to be hashtags. Let's rename this rather than location. I believe what we're calling these are pages, because that makes a lot of sense naming-wise. And we've got a, I think we named the modules. No, okay, that's good. So we'll name a page game, game page, and map builder page. And then, actually we were just penning that, but I don't think it makes it any more readable. So, let's do hash, consistency. Some page gives us a string. And we've got the game page and a map builder page. So it says that there is a problem with having game page already defined. I see. So instead of the message for that, maybe we just call these like set game, set map builder. Set game, set map builder. All right. And then it's init. Let's see what admin does on his init. It starts with some result of a string, a page, result of type string and page, and produces a model with command. Cool. And then he calls URL update with that result and gives it a starting state. Cool. So URL updates. We've got a result from the trying to go to some page, and then we're going to pass it our model. Cool. So our model does not need a URL in there. And game page. The other question is, do we store that? Okay, so we are storing page. But what's interesting is, we're not storing we're storing the game model. So when he has a different page, I believe he's not nesting anything, but okay, yeah. So neither of these are still defined in the context of his top level model, because it's a small example. But for our use case, we're also going to store the current page that you're on. So we'll just say current page, and then we'll say game map builder. Okay, so page. We'll have the default attribute be the game page. So this, we get a page for these different ones. Do we need this location for each one? That's a good question. So let's see. We have an init. That seems reasonable. We are storing our page in our model. We need to make some kind of parser for a page. So let's throw that in next to our definition of what pages are. So our page parser, we don't have home, we have game page. We've got map builder page. And that's it for now. And we want to parse out game and map builder. And we don't really need any other arguments here. S matches exactly the string. And then some format. I believe format is coming in here. And then so now we have some kind of way of parsing the page. These are specific to his app. This is specific to his app. Nothing of this is dealing with URL except when he wants to navigate via something on his page, which we'll do soon, because typing in the URL bar is annoying. And URL update, let's see what that looks like. Let's also remove this. So URL update is actually taking the result of a string page with the two types, string and page, defined, and then it's got a model, and our model command. So result, model. So looks like what we have in his is some error handling for the results, and also some debug logging across each one. So I think the debug log makes a lot of sense here while we're starting out. It's usually a good thing to do in your Elm code is to log the different types or the different values of something that you're switching on. So the debug log, let's just say URL result of some error, if things did not go well with some error message that we don't really care about. We're just going to return the model and our navigation dot modify URL. Yeah, that way it won't add it to the stack. If we use modify URL, it adds a new entry and it just changes the one that you're on. And then we will call toHash that we crafted up there, or Evan did for us, with our page. That's currently in the model. Then another thing I just noticed is that in our init, we now have a new shape. So we have game, we have map builder, but also we no longer need a URL is one thing, but we also have the current page. So let's set the page to start. Let's do game page. So now we've handled errors, and now let's assume our result is good. We've got something great for us, and that would be interesting. He's got search query as page. Okay, so he's aliasing query as the page. So in this case, I think, what do we get? He has two OKs here. So two different things that result could be. So either the query or the page. Let's just start with the page case. And this is returning, we need to return a new model for this. Now, if you haven't seen this before, this operator is defined on process. So if we go to an Elm process, I believe. Nope, not process. Sorry, command. Platform.command. So for commands, we normally return like a list with command.none, but this just takes your model in a list of commands and returns it in that shape. So it's just a shortcut, a little bit of syntactic sugar. So basically, this is doing the same thing as putting this in a tuple and returning some command here. So if, in this case, he's saying if dictionary is a member with this query, then we're going to, we're not going to do anything. Otherwise, we go and get with that query. So we got to do some command. So we don't need to worry about any of that right now. We're just going to have no commands returned. And our page should update. So let's say model where page equals page. And we don't have anything else. So we can remove all this stuff. Cool. And then our update probably shouldn't have to change at all. And we've got some page parser now. We need to import string. And this should be making a parser with the hash parser that we find. And hash parser find here, navigation location, yep. Okay, so now we have two issues. Yeah, it wants this thing. Oh, it seems like it says it's ambiguous because we're importing HTML.s and S. Oh, strike through. So there's an HTML strike through. So this is probably going to be a pretty limited module in terms of we don't want really to build much HTML here at all. So for my view, I'm just going to use HTML dot the entire time just for the main view. So that means I won't expose all of HTML. Except I will expose the type so that my methods are nice to, so that my function signatures look nice. This isn't used at all, but we'll just wait on that a bit. Okay, so now it's saying game page, yep, it's no longer a thing. All.game. This also does not exist. And here, set game. Alright. Page is not function. Alright, so we want to have set game. Alright. So now something should be there. I wonder if we type in map builder, if something new will happen. Nope. And sure. Why would that not happen? So let's see, we've been debugging. We've been logging the results. All right, so it says, okay, map builder page. So it did switch. So the map builder page, this makes sense. Maybe it was even working before, but I actually never switch to another page in my app. So case model dot page of, we said game page. So in the case of the game page, we're going to return this. In the case of the map builder page, we're going to return map builder dot view and give it the map builder that we own. Cool. Oh, there we go. So we got routing. Sweet. I was probably a lot closer with the other implementation, but I like this a lot more for its simplicity. I hope a good amount of that made sense. If you have any questions, please ask in the stream. But so now I'm going to switch gears a little bit after I commit this because I'm pretty happy that it works. Fixed routing. Cool. So now I'm going to switch to whiteboarding for this map API. Let's As soon as I switched to this, I just realized this also did not have audio input. So as you saw by my do a little bit of video streaming. I have some pretty cool setup here with a stack of boxes, Soylent, and a whiteboard on a drum stool on a box. So, what are we going to do here is basically draw an example map that we want. I think the goal is to get eventually, by the way, if I haven't mentioned, the inspiration for this idea came from my friend Connor, who is working on a fan fiction Pokemon game that's like pretty cool, and I wanted to give him the means to build it without him having much programming knowledge, but I like him to be able to do it as if someone who had never touched any code. So this eventually should be able to play a Pokemon game, which means some pretty intense map features. So I'm going to draw out an example. So I'm going to assume that every map that we build the underlying representation should be square. It makes the matrix stuff easier for now. And I think what we should do is, if the map only takes up, if it has odd shapes, we'll just have those squares not have any accessibility. Like the player can't move to it, or we can make them invisible. But that's why I kind of wanted to figure out here. So let's say this is a map. So let me know 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So pretty. Actually, this is not by 5 by 5. This is 5 by 6. So let's keep this square. And then the idea, like I was just noting, is that maybe we have squares that are completely inaccessible. So maybe someone's map, these squares are not accessible and not even seen, and perhaps inside the map, like this is some kind of ground, and maybe in this red, this is like a door, not a tile. Some way to get into another map. And then we have some kind of maybe water tiles. And then what was very common in Pokemon games was you might have some fine grass, and then you might have like some tall grass where random encounters could occur. So some of those concepts apply to both like Final Fantasy games and other event-based 2D RPGs. So what we want is we want to have the ability to craft the map where it's just, oh, what are the tiles, what do they look like, what are the sprites, and then we needed a way to uniquely identify them as a type. So like tall grass is different than not tall grass, just normal grass. And so the API that I currently have in mind is to have some name, and it's a string. When we're talking about this goes out to JSON, some way of serializing this, giving it to someone saying, hey, here's a map I built. Do you want to use a map editor to work with it? Like, of course, you could follow a link to our app, and then you could maybe fork it or whatever else eventually. But naively, you could just give me a JSON file, and I should be able to hit upload for that. So these will be all JavaScript primitives. I can't use, I see that the light is kind of in the way there. So actually, I'm going to move that down a bit. Even a bit more. So name, string, and then there should be some kind of background image, or maybe even better in the background image, because I don't care about the CSS there. We'll just say image. And that's going to be some string, probably like a URL to that, either like an SVG or URL for like some file. Figure that out kind of later, just work with some format that works for now, and then kind of generalize from there, think about all the different file types that could come in. And then the next thing we need to think about is, should we have something where these tiles that are blacked out are completely opaque. Like always in our game check, we're like, is this type of tile? Because if it is, we can't go into it. The problem is this wouldn't really fit with this model because now what if they have different named one? I guess they could have different named inaccessible tiles, but I'm trying to figure out, does it make sense to have different layers to the map? So for instance, you'd have, like, this is just our map layer, and then we have some kind of layer on top of this where it's the things that you can interact with, like movement, what you can move into, because some things are conditional. Like in Pokemon, to enter a water tile, you need to be swimming, and you'd be swimming with one of your Pokemon. In Final Fantasy, I don't know if there's probably some mechanism like a submarine, whatever else, to get into the water, and so you need to have some condition, like it's in your inventory or you hit use, and then you can move into that tile. So there needs to be some kind of movement API, and I don't think that any of this should be defined on the actual tile, because sharing maps enables you to define any look of tile, and then you can add those rules later. So I think that needs to sit as a layer on top. So I'm calling this just like the map layer, and that's what we're focusing on today. But then this would probably be like probably movement logic, the movement layer. And my next guess would be that either this layer could be also encompassing of actions, like pressing certain keys and buttons brings up menus or whatever else. But I'm guessing that there needs to be something, I don't have a good name for this yet, but like interactables is like the only thing that's come to mind. Please give me a better name in the stream if you have one. But the idea here is that, let's say I'm on this grass and there's, in Pokemon there might be a rock here, and I need to be able to break this rock. So I need to have some skill on a Pokemon and then use that to go ahead and change the state of this map. So this actually has like nothing to do with the background tile, right? Like the actual image. This is just saying I overlaid some image on top of it, imposed it, and when I break that rock, like it just goes away. And maybe it doesn't just go away. Maybe it also has like a kind of broken state. But the idea is that in this layer we should have things on the map, like NPCs and these breakable objects or these things with state, and that they can change. So I think that's maybe it should be called stateful actors or just actor layer. I don't know. So this layer comes later, but I'm kind of giving you a where we're gonna get to. But I don't know what goes on top of this layer, if there's anything. But I think starting down here is a good idea. And I'm trying to determine right now is in the movement layer there's a lot of conditional movement, right? Like we have things where we can't move into the water unless we're swimming. We can't move into like certain features unless we have like a chocobo in Final Fantasy. Or we get to also determine how fast we move, how many tiles we move by in some games. So there's just a lot of things in the air there that should not belong just on the map's visual. But I think that maybe defining a hard and fast, is accessible, or like just some boolean for saying no matter what in this game, we cannot go to this tile. And then you could say that anything with that kind of marker, like a forever, you cannot enter this, we could maybe have some business logic for what happens with it. Because let's say the edges of this map are like this, and so the actual shape of the map ends up looking like, the actual shape of the map here ends up looking like, let's say just this, right? Someone wants to design that shape of a map. Should these black marks of inaccessible tiles, should these display clouds? Should they display like rocks, like big walls or something? Should they have like city walls, whatever? I think that it'd be convenient for a user just to be able, with no extra configuration on the like movement side of things, to just be able to say, oh, when they made this, yeah, I'm pretty sure I always want this just to be visual. And then maybe they can give certain behaviors based on the name, which is correlated to like what it looks like, on how it should look. Like, should it be invisible? Should there like maybe be a camera, like it should like pan out, or like go beyond what the camera should see. So that's the other thing, is that I have no idea yet exactly how the camera work is going to work with this. I'm guessing the best way is that on movement, we shift a camera around, some kind of camera box. So a camera box is another layer. Now, I don't know where it necessarily sits in this order, but at least we know that we need some kind of camera. And I know that there's been some community work on like Elm 2D Game was a package, and I'm definitely gonna go check those out before future streams and see if there's any work we can pull from there and incorporate into this game. But generally, the camera box will look like, I don't know, maybe I'm right here. This is where my player is, and so it maybe looks like this. You can determine how big it is. Maybe you can change the size on zoom. But then we need to have some kind of logic for what happens when this, like, you never want to see this thing maybe. Maybe it's just clouds, I don't know. But there should be some kind of logic for that to work for different people's games. But I think that this makes sense. For now, if we get in a hotspot and it doesn't make sense anymore, I think it's just an Elm. It's nice to refactor, so I'm not really too worried about it. But it seems like a good common sense rule for now. I don't know that there's anything else that we need to represent this map, but that's kind of how I came to this decision of what a tile should look like. And so for the actual UI that we're about to build this thing up, I'm thinking, let's see, you can see over here, I'm thinking we have, this is like the map, and we'll show all the things that you can fill in. And let's see if we have to fill in everything in all of these borders to actually have it be a valid map, and then that's your form validation. And then on the side we have some kind of toolbox where we have all of these different map tiles that we've created to insert in here. So tall grass, short grass, water. What we can do is click on a new square here, maybe have like a little plus button, and have this thing kind of scroll in between. And as you go up and down in this, you can pick one and eventually drag it over to the tile that you want. I think that that's a pretty easy interface. It'd be nice to get some cool keyboard shortcut things for people who are real fast. But I think to start with, we have these over here. We make a skeleton, and then when people click on this, we go ahead and add, we have a drop-down pop-up, and then we can select. And I think that that makes a lot of sense for people who are actually tabbing over and going tile by tile as well. So I think that that's the first UI I'm going to build. One, because it's good to see two different pieces of UI work, especially a simpler one. And then I'd like to do a drag start event, drag end event, and drag it over and have it snap in. And that seems really fun because I've never done that before. And then after this map builder's kind of built, the next episode, who knows, probably thinking about this part or hosting it or whatever else. But this is where I think I'm going just for today. So it's been like 50 minutes. I'm going to take a little break and put on some music for you and then come right back. Should be about 5 minutes. Thanks for tuning in.